Python program, right? How to read the files from the Python program. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let us look at this one, how to read the files from the. So we are much familiar with file handling in C and C++, right? Exactly same thing it is there in the Python programming as well, but only with respect, like there are some things which you know have, which is supposed to know it with respect to the Python programming. That is like your C and C++, even with Java. So before reading or writing anything into the file, you're supposed to open the file, right? So that is exactly what you know it, right? Before opening any file, before reading or writing into the file, you're supposed to open a file. And once the file has been opened, it will return a handler. And using that handler, we can write or write into the file, or we can read it from the file. In case of C and C++, we call it as the a file descriptor. We call it as a file descriptor, but as far as the Python program is considered, so we call it as the handler, right? That is called as the file handler. So let us look at how these things works. So we have something called as the input and output devices. That is, you can input it from the device. So okay, and there is central processing unit and the main memory. And if you want to get the, like if you want to get the value from a secondary storage memory or a memory, what you do is that you just load it from the memory, secondary storage or the memory, and into the main memory, and you start working it. That is what the whole setup of the things. What that basically contains, the secondary memory basically contains the files. That is uh, the files which is stored permanently. So before uh, reading the contents of the file, what you supposed that you have to bring it into the main memory. And once it brought it into the main memory, you're supposed to open it. Once you open it, you start reading from the file, or you can write it into the file. That is exactly the setup of the entire uh, entire primary memory as well as the secondary memory. Now we look at this. A text file can be thought of as a sequence of lines. As you already know that it is nothing but a sequence of lines. That is, you look at this one, we have all the lines here. So that is from Stephen dot marker and all the things, right? We have all these things, and this entire sequence of line is written into a permanent file or a permanent memory. We generally call it as the file, right? And to process this file, we have to open this file, get a file handler, then you're supposed to process the file. So let us look at this one. Opening, before we can read the contents of the file, we must tell Python which file we are going to work with and what we'll do with you using the file. That is exactly what you are doing in C and C++ as well. Before going to read the contents of the file, you're supposed to open the file, and also you have to tell the operating system stating that what you are going to do it, whether you want to read only the contents of the file, or we want to write something into the file as well. And it is done with a function called as the open, that is basically used to return, it is basically used to open a file it is. And once the file open function is done successfully, means that if the file is existing, and if you are able to open the file, then it will return a handler. We call it as the file handle, or a variable used to perform operation on the file. Or it is something like it is a file handler, or also it is a pointer pointing to the all the open files, right? And it is something like opening the file in a word processor, like file one open. So that is, if you want to read the value either from the file, or if you want to if you want to write something into the file, before doing that you're supposed to open the file, right? And you have to state the purpose of opening the file, whether you want to read the contents of the file, or you want to write something into the file. So once it is done, it returns a file handler. You, throughout the operations, throughout the file operation, you're supposed to use only that file handler, right? So here is one example of opening a file, right? What you're doing is that you're using the function called as a open. You're using the function called as a open, and open the name of the file, and followed by the mode, whether you want to read it or you want to write it, or you're supposed to specify it. Once the file has been opened successfully, right? So what it will do is that it will return a handler, and that handler will be assigned to a variable called as the handle here, right? It returns the handle used to manipulate the file. It is basically used to manipulate the file. File name is a string, so that is that, you know it, right? And mode is optional. It is optional, right? Mode, you can specify the mode of the operation, whether you want to read it or write it, or it is optional whether you may or may not write it. And should be, or if you are planning reading the file, right, the mode will be R if you want to read the contents of the file, and W if you are going to write write it to the file. Look at one example here. I have something called as open, and I want to open the file called as a mbox type or mbox dot text in a read mode. The name of the file is mbox dot text, and uh, the mode you have is read. And once it is done successfully, it will return a file handler. It will return a file handler, and which will be assigned to. It will return a handler called as a f hand, right? And throughout the file operations, you're supposed to use this file handler that is called as the file f hand. So all in all, what you're supposed to do that, you have to, before opening a file, you're supposed to, so before reading the file, you're supposed to open it and get a file handler. Once it is done, you can perform operations like read operation, or you can perform the write operation as well. And what is this handler? And look at this one. Fn is equal to open mbox dot text. Here, as you already know that m is an sorry mode is an optional, right? So in the next example, what they have done is that they have omitted or they have ignored the mode, whether it is read or write operation, that has been ignored. So what you got it is the what it is going to print fn. It's going to point to the file that is called as the mbox in a read mode by default at a location, at a given location called as a 105088B0, which is nothing but the the pointer, or which is nothing but the address where all the open file resides. And mbox.text will contains the address, or it has opened at a location called as a 105088B0, and this f hand is going to point to that particular memory locations. That memory location, it is something like the file descriptor what you have studied in the C and C++, right? And suppose if the file doesn't exist, let us take for example, in this case we assume that the file exists in the current location or in the current directory. There are few occasions where the files are missing, right? The file doesn't exist in the specified location, or the file, you don't have the proper authentication or the proper permission to open that file. In that case, what you get it's an error message stating the file doesn't exist. Look at this example, right? F and is equal to open stuff.txt. So what you're doing is that in this case, stuff is not exist in the current location, right? Or it is not present in the given directory. In that case, it will generate an error message stating trace back most recent call last and all the things. There is one error message called as no such file or directory called by the name stuff.txt, is stating that stuff.txt is not being located in the current directory, or no such file exists in the current directory. So you are unable to open that file, and such errors has to be handled by the user before looking at the before opening the things, or even after opening things, you have to make sure that the f handler is pointing to an open file. If the file is not opened properly, it has to generate an error message. Once it generates an error message, it is a job of the programmer to catch that error and has to handle it, right? Such things is not acceptable. So instead what you have to do is that you have to do it manually, or you have to do it programmatically before opening the file, stating that the stuff.txt doesn't exist in the file, so that these errors are not human readable errors can be eliminated, right? These are not these errors cannot be read by the end users properly, right? As a programmer you can understand it, but as far as the end users, they cannot understand it. Such errors has to be caught, and they has to be handled very carefully. And look at this one. For every character, so for every um, things what we have, we know that there is something called as a new line. At the end of every line we have something called as a new line character, or also called as the escape sequences. And we use a special character to indicate when a line ends, called as the new line character, which is marked with a ampersand, backslash n. It is to mark the end of the line, current line. We represent it as backslash n in strings. New line is still one character, not two. It is still one character, not two. That is, backslash is not one character and n is one character. Whole, that is backslash one is one character in length, right? So look at this. The stuff is equal to hello backslash n, and the word, when you print this, it won't print it as hello backslash n word. Instead it will print the first character, sorry, first string hello in one line, and followed by a new line character stating that your execution control, or your command prompt will proceed to the next line. In the next line, the string word will be get printed, right? And similarly, you look at this one, this example, stuff equal to x backslash n and pi. So when we print this one, it will print the value x in the first line, and then followed by new line character, that is backslash n, and followed by y in the next line. So even though this is treated as one string of length 3, that is, this is one character in length, this is another character, and this is third character. But what happens when you print this one, you will get some uh, something which is unacceptable, sorry, unexpected one, right? What is that? X will be printed in the first line, whereas followed by backslash n, which is nothing but a new line character, and followed by in the next line it is going to print the value y, that is y. And if you look at the length of the entire string, it is going to print it as 3, stating that x is one character in length, and backslash is n, it's one more character, and y is third character. So the length of the entire string, it is 3, right? So this, using this backslash n, you can manipulate these things. So it is, as you already know, that text file can be thought of as a sequence of lines. It is nothing but a sequence of lines. This is one line followed by a backslash n. This is another line followed by a backslash n. This is third line followed by a backslash n, and so on for all the characters, for all the lines in the file. You are going to append backslash n. So look at this one. A text file has new lines at the end of each line, right? So this is one line. At the end of this one, we have something called as backslash n, and we have the second line followed by backslash n. We have the third line followed by backslash n, and so on. For each line, you have something called as a backslash n or a new line character, right? So using this new line character, you can easily manipulate each and every lines here. So a file handle as a sequence. A file handle open for read can be treated as a sequence of strings where each line in the line file is a string in the sequence. What you're doing is that each line, what you have, this is first line, second line, third line, and so on. They all be treated as one string. They all be treated as one string, and you can manipulate it. We can use the for statement to iterate through a sequence. You can iterate through each and every line of the file using the const statement. Remember, a sequence is an order set. It is nothing but an order set. Look at this example. Open mbox.txt. So what I'm doing is that I'll get a file handler called as x file. So what it will do is that I'm reading each line. I'm reading each line further from the file handler, that is x file, and for each line it will be stored into the cheese. And what you're doing is you're going to print the value cheese on the file. So in this case, cheese or this variable iterative variable contains each line of the file called as the mbox or text. To look at this example, look at this one, the this one, the cheese, the first for the first iteration, the iteration variable contains this entire line. It contains the entire line. In the second iteration, it contains the second line. In the third iteration, it contains the third line, and so on and so forth, right? So like this, it is going to print the output of the terminal, right? And look at this one, you can count the number of lines in a file. That is very easy one, right? Look at this one, for each value you are reading, for each line you are reading it, what you do is that you just take a counter and you increment it. I just take a counter and increment it. That is exactly what they are doing it. Open a file in read only, use a for loop to read each line, count the lines and print out the number of lines in it, right? So that is what. Now it is just an expansion of this one. For each line what you are reading it, you are taking a counter and incrementing for every iteration. You're incrementing it for every iteration. Look at this one. I have opened a file. I have opened a file and I have begun a counter to. So look at this one. Counter will be initialized. Count equal to 0, and for each line in the file handler, if you read the first line, count will be incremented by 1. If you read the second line, the count will be incremented 1, and so on. So as long as there are lines in the file handler, so the counter will be incremented by 1 time for each iteration. For each line you have read, the count value will be incremented by 1. At the end of all these things, what you're doing is that you're just printing the value of the line count, which is nothing but the count value, where that is count that will be get printed. In this case, I have something called as the line count, which is, I have some lines like 1,32,045 lines in a given file called as the mbox.txt, like this. So the whole idea is to count the number of lines in a given input file, whatever the file it may be, right? So in this case, the number of lines you have 1,32,045 lines. And if you want to search for a string, right, either at the beginning of either at the beginning of the line, you can use the file as well. We can put an if statement in our for loop to only print lines that meet some criteria, right? You can test for some criteria, and based on that some criteria, if it has met, we are just printing that value. Look at this example. I'm just opening a file, that is a mbox short.txt. Then I'm reading each line from the file handler, that is a file, from the into the iterative variable. If the line starts with the from, if the line starts with from, I'm printing only that line. If the line started from, so I'm just printing that. Otherwise we are skipping that line and moving to the next line. All right, and we're reading the next line. Again, we're checking whether the next line starts from or not. If it starts from, I'm again printing that line. Otherwise I'm skipping this one and I'm moving to the next line, like this for all the inputs, for all the lines in the file. So I'm just reading it. I'm just reading each and every line. And if the line has been looking starts with if the line starts with from, I'm printing line, otherwise we are moving to the next line. Like this, all the lines in the given file will be scanned, and if it starts with the from, we are printing it, otherwise we are not doing it. And here, look at this one. From, we are all blank lines coding here, right? So, right, you have something what as from, Stephen marker, and all the things, right? But in between that, we have something called as a spaces here, or a new lines. How, why it has happened? Because at the end of each line, we have something called as the backslash. We have something called as the backslash. When you do that, when you read that one, that is, each one has been started with from, right? But at the end of this one, we have something called as a backslash. When the interpreter finds backslash at the end of the, it will leave a line immediately after this current line, and it will print the next line after that. Again, this was a new line character. So okay, again it will leave one more space here, or one more line, and again it will print everything. So to avoid this one, what you're doing is that, like, look at this one. From Stephen market at uct at ac.ja, then a backslash. What are all these blank lines doing here? Each line from the file has a new line at the end. That is, each line has a backslash at the end of the line. At the end, the print statement adds a new line to each line, right? For every output what it's seeing, see, it is going to add backslash n, right? That's why it appears, your output appears like this. Your output appears like this. There is one line, then followed by a blank line, then another line, then a blank line, and so on, right? So to avoid this one, what you're doing is that you can strip the end of the string, right? You have to strip the end of the line. What you do is that you are doing that when using r strip, that is the right strip, the right white space has to be removed. We can strip the white space from the right hand side of the string using r strip, right? So it is at the end, right? It is at the we can strip the things at the end of the line. That is right stripping, we are doing it. It is at the right hand, right? So we are stripping the white space. To know that one, even the new line character is also treated as a white space. It's also treated as a white space. That's why what you're doing is that we're stripping that character. If you strip that character or the white space at the end of the line, what you're doing is that you just search for the string, or the search for the line which starts from. If it starts from, that line will get printed. Now all the lines have been stripped with like the white spaces or the new line character has been stripped down. So what you get, the output is from stripping market at city.is.za, and so on, without the blank lines, because the new line character has been eliminated. They are they are removed from the original lines. So in this way, you can print the lines, right, without having the blank lines. You can strip the white space from the right hand side of the string using strip or a strip from the string library. The new line is considered white space, and it is stripped off, right? So this is what your code looks like. Fn is equal to open mbox hyphen short, which is nothing but the file what we are reading it, and followed by I'm opening the, once I open the file, we get the file handle called as fhand, and you have the iterative function or the iterative element called as a line, and that is going to be that is going to read each line. And before reading each line, what we are doing is that we are uh, stripping the right white space. Once it is done, checking whether the line starts with what is the from or not. If it starts with one, printing only those lines. Otherwise we are skipping and moving to the next line, right? So this is what the searching through a file, right? And you can skip the things here, right? So there is something called as a, we can conveniently skip a line by using the continuous statement, but you can do it. In the last example, what you have done is that we have purposefully uh, look for a character or a line which starts with from. But if the line starts with from, we are not printing that line. So that this is one example, like like if it doesn't starts with from, we're not printing that line. Otherwise we were printing that line. So this is just the not of the previous one, not of this one. Look at this example. We can conveniently skip a line by using the continuous statement f and. So we are getting the file handler here. Then we are reading each line from the file handler, and we are stripping the right side, a right white space. And if not, if the line doesn't starts with from, we are continuing it. That is, we are moving to the next line, or we are skipping the rest of the instruction and we are moving to the next line. And if the next line doesn't starts with no from, I'm continuing, I'm skipping the rest of the instruction and I am moving to the next line. Like this, we can use something called as a not and the continue to skip the lines which doesn't meet the criteria, right? And you can use something called as in to select those particular lines, right? You can look for a string anywhere in a line as your selection criteria, right? We can search for uh, search for a substring in a given string and just and print that particular value. We can look for a string anywhere in a line as well as selection criteria. F and that is a file handler. If it is a code, like it has opened something or as a mbox dot hyphen short dot txt, and I'm reading each line and into an iteration variable, and we are stripping the last line, sorry, last white space. And if the line doesn't contain this substring, that is at uct.ac.exe, I'm skipping that. I'm skipping the rest of the line. The whole idea is that I want to print only those lines which contains at uct.ac.za as their email IDs, right? If the line, those lines which doesn't contains at uct.ac.za will be skipped. So, to have that one, writing these codes, that is the line f and line is photo line dot as rst, and followed by if not at uctac.z in line, right? In the line, if it is not present, this particular substring is not present, you continue with the next line, continue with the next line. So once it executes, so this is your output seems to be. Look at all the lines. All these lines contain at uct.ac.z. All the lines, right? Stephen dot marked at uct.ac.za, and X authentication warning, send Stephen dot, and all these things. But only thing is that all these email IDs has a domain name uc.ac. That is what we are looking at in the things. And all the lines which doesn't contain this domain name, that is at uct.ac.za, will be skipped, right? That is what the meaning of the thing, right? And also you can ask for the user to enter a file name. This is very much important because in the last examples what you have done is that we have hard coded the name of the file. We have hard coded the name of the file. Once you have hard coded it, what you can do is that you have to run only with that file, only with that file. If you want to run the code with some other file, so what you have to do is that you have to go back to the file or source code, and you have to change the file name. You have to change the file name Once you change the file name, then again recompile it and you have to run it again. But this is a cumbersome task, right? Because I want to make the program as much interactive as possible. To avoid that one, what you're doing is that I can ask the user file name at runtime itself. There will be no problem at all. Like once the user enters the file name, you can use that file name and open it and use it in your applications, right? Look at this example. That is, I'm asking the user to enter the user file name. There is enter the file name, and once you enter the file name, it will be stored in a variable called as f name. And you are opening that file name. There is f name, and we'll get a file handler and count equal to 0 if line in f hand. If it starts with a subject, I'm implementing a counter called as the count plus one. That is, there were count. There is number of uh, lines which starts with subject line in the frame. That is how you can get it. The only idea is that we are making the program as much interactive as possible. That is, f name is equal to, we are asking the user to enter the file. In this case, you need not have to change the name of the file every time. What you can do is that compile it once, compile it one, run for any number of times, right? And you can change the file name as and when you want it, right? In the first one, you can enter a one.txt. In the second run, you can run the two.txt and so on, right? For each run, you can give a different file name, so your program will work correctly. But with this example, this kind of example, what you do is that you have to go back to your source code and you have to change it. That is, if we are running it for file one, that is one.txt. If you are running it for file two, you have to manually change it to two.txt and so on. To avoid that one, you can ask the user interactively. Once he enters it, you can make use of that one, and you just perform all your logical operations, right? And this is your output seems to be, right? So we don't know but the thing is that I'm entering two file names, right? The first file name is mbox.txt and second file name is mbox hyphen short.txt. Look at this. There are two file names we have entered it, right? In the first run, we have entered mbox.txt. In the second run, we have entered mbox hyphen short.txt, right? We have got different results. It is based on the contents of the file, right? And there are, as I told you, if the file doesn't exist, if the file is unable to open it, or if the file is corrupted, if you don't have the proper authentication to open the file, then obviously there are some error messages, and these error messages has to be handled by the programmer itself. Look at one example here. So we have something called as a input, enter the file name. I'm asking the user to enter a file name, so f name. If the file is not present, let us take for example, I'm entering something called as mbox mbox.txt. I'm entering a file called as mbox.txt. At that time, if the file doesn't exist, right, if the file exists, no issues, it won't generate any error message. Your file will be opened and it is going to count the number of lines which starts with a subject, and it will print it. Let us assume that you have entered a file name. Let us say the name of the file is Nana, Bobo, and so on. And assume that if the file doesn't exist, or if there is no file by the name called as a Nana Bobo, right? In that case, it you'll get the error something like this. I'll show you, right? I'll get some error called as no such file or directory. This is not a good programming approach. If you leave the errors as it is, if you leave the errors as it is, that is going to create unreadable outputs. To avoid that one, what you have to do is that you have to handle it, or you have to handle them very carefully. Look at this one. I'm catching those exceptions and I'm putting it, I'm handling